Chris, so awesome to have you here today. Can't wait to dive in and chat a little bit more. A fellow Brit. There's not enough of us on the Groundwork podcast so far, so I'm excited about that at the very least. Where we like to start is maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks, Tai. Great to be here. And nice to see more and more Brits getting on the Groundwork podcast. My journey's been a really interesting one. And I believe we've actually, besides both being British, we've got a fairly similar path. We both started in finance out of education. So started in HSBC in the UK as a commercial manager, basically responsible for lending money and getting it back to a portfolio of companies. Left there 9.5 years ago now and sort of jumped across to LeadForensics. The banking industry is wildly different from the SaaS, the tech industry, and never mind partnerships. So it was an interesting transition for sure. But I feel like a lot of what you learn in banking, particularly in that role, has definitely sort of seen me well in partnerships, a lot of time management, prioritization, account management. And in thinking about this, ahead of this podcast, I was actually thinking that I actually learned quite a lot around co-selling back then, where I never thought I did. So, joined LeadForensics 9.5 years ago over in the UK as a partner manager, and then moved across here to Atlanta back in 2016 to head up our US partner team. And then just 3 months ago, back in July, I took over global head of partnerships here at LeadForensics.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. And I can't wait to dig into that experience over the last 3 months since it's been so fresh.
It's been a roller coaster.
Yeah, I bet. I can only imagine. Let's start at the start and we'll kind of work our way back. So yeah, you're right. Like both started in finance. I like to tell people that, there wasn't that much tech like when I was growing up in the south of England, and I think, you're probably in a similar boat, got into working like a similar age, up in Nottingham. So probably there wasn't a bunch of cool tech jobs available at the time, and getting into something like that was as good as it gets.
Absolutely. I remember from school, we had like career days. And there's only one thing I can remember from those. And it was somebody telling me that my future job didn't exist yet. And like little 15-year-old Chris was like, nah, that's rubbish. I didn't accept it. Could not get it into my head. And then I randomly remembered it many years later. I'm like, yeah, this job never existed. Like this company never existed. Like this concept, this technology never existed. I'm like, yeah, they were right all along.
Yeah. I remember when I was reading Wired magazine, and like I was on online forums and stuff all the time, just being a general nerd. And I remember when I first found out about a role at like a legit tech company. There was like a few SEO agencies in Brighton, and I think there was like a direct marketing company that was like a pseudo tech company, but it was really just an agency as well. And that would have been like somewhat compelling, but obviously they paid very, very badly. And so once finding out, I got my first tech job was at Optimizely, and finding out that there was a role at Optimizely that I could go work at this tech company that had been in Wired magazine and everything was it blew my mind.
Come true.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how finance oriented the UK is if you're from the US. But you mentioned working at HSBC, that's kind of where you learn about co-selling. I'd love to unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I only really, I only thought about this a few days ago. My job back then was working with clients, selling them overdrafts, selling them loans, selling sort of finance packages, and then ultimately getting that back in. But yeah, alongside that, I worked with a team that sold regulated products. So I was finding opportunities, pulling them in, and then we had great relationship, and Paul or whoever it was at the time was finding opportunities and pulling me in because we had different client bases. And it just worked organically because of the value add and how our two offerings were interlinked. If I'm selling somebody a commercial mortgage, they should probably have some sort of protection on that. So I just, Paul, you need to speak to Tai. and just formulated that introduction. And we sort of co-sold, and there was obviously benefit to myself in that. And then similarly, if he was speaking to a potential client who banked elsewhere, he would be like, oh, you need to go and speak to Chris, or let me introduce you to Chris. And it just became like a really natural introduction. And it wasn't something that we went, oh yeah, we're co-selling. The term co-selling may not have even existed back then. It was just what we did, and it just worked really, really nicely. And yeah, just never realized it until more recently. I'm like, maybe I did learn that back then.
Yeah, and was that something that was encouraged or facilitated within the company, or is that something that, kind of individuals had to figure out themselves?
Yeah, it was pretty facilitated, to be honest with you. Like, we had business partners that did it, so I was dedicated to Paul and his wider team. It wasn't something that I just jumped on LinkedIn and found Paul and went, Paul, we should probably speak. There's an opportunity here. And
Yeah.
so it was a little facilitated, yeah.
That's amazing. I often tell people that when I was working at Amex, I didn't realize at the time, but we did a lot of really good partnership work as well. And then looking back now, as you kind of did, it's like, oh, well, that was a partnership, and someone probably worked on that, and that was like, they built that plan and rolled it out to the sales team, and we executed on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have been doing that in finance for a really long time. There's probably a lot of notes that we could take there. Something that's like interesting to me. I was talking to someone literally yesterday about this. It's like, you were like a commercial account manager, basically, at HSBC, right? And like,
Yeah.
in my mind, that would be a great fit for someone to go into a partnerships role. Like,
Yeah.
sounds like an awesome fit, really transferable skills. Like, what skills did you find were transferable moving into partnerships, and what did you find you didn't need anymore, I guess?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. And I used to, when I first started at Lead Forensics, and I was thinking back to my days at HSBC, I was like, what did I do on a daily basis? Because I knew I was incredibly busy. I was busier than I was at Lead Forensics, which, don't tell Lead Forensics that. But it was prioritization and time management. Like, there was so much going on at HSBC that, like, you literally had an inbox full of paper. Like, I'm sure they don't anymore. I'm sure it's all digital, but you had a folder on your desk just piling high with like agreements and things you had to do, and just constantly prioritizing what's most important, what's urgent, and working towards that on a daily basis. When I came across to Lead Forensics, I was selling one product to our partners. I was acquiring new partners, enabling partners, training partners, onboarding partners, and then just letting them fly with Lead Forensics. So it was very strange having a suite of products and then moving across to one product.
Mm-hmm.
And I did feel like I perhaps wasn't as working as hard because it was just so singularly focused. But then as I sort of stepped up, particularly over the last 3 months, I'm looking at it going, okay, I'm back dealing with like so many different things, and my inbox and my to-do list is just growing and growing and growing. And then, I'll be lying in bed at 10 o'clock at night and go, oh, I need to do this. I add it to the to-do list. Whereas 6 years ago, that didn't exist.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like, what are the things? So we talked a little bit about like, prioritization and pulling those skills across. Like, what are some of the things that were new to you that you had to learn when you were kind of transitioning into partnerships from account management?
I think, and this might sound a little contradictory with the co-selling piece, but it was the concept of selling.
Yeah.
Like, HSBC, they're like one of the top banks in the world, particularly over in the UK. So you could go to somebody and be like, hey, I'm HSBC. Do you want to talk about banking? Like, you didn't have to convince them. Like, we had a reputation and a name behind us. Moving across to Lead Forensics, when we tell you who's on your website, that technology and that concept 12 years ago was like brand new. And you'll talk to a digital marketing agency, one of those ones in Brighton at the time, and you'd be like, hey, yeah, we do this. And they're like, you can do that? I'm like, yeah. And it was the education piece and actually having to sell the products and the concepts and the technology that was a fairly steep learning curve for me.
Yeah.
Just from being the number one player in the space to people don't know about the space.
Yeah.
That was a really wild learning curve for sure. Additionally, just the concept of a partnership. Like I always treated initially I treated the agency as my client, and I'm selling to you, so I've got to convince you. And then they were like, no, we're on board. Like, we're trying to sell the client. I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to sell you. And it was just a strange concept for the first few months. But then once I got through that and we're like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we're on the same side here. It all made a lot more sense.
Yeah, I that kind of re-education or education piece really resonated with me, just because, again, you're at LeadForensics, I was at Optimizely, like in the same universe of products, and like I would definitely get the reaction of, you can do that, or I don't think you should be able to do that. Like Optimizely, for we're running experiments on people's websites, like giving people different experiences, and even recently, like as recently as like a couple of weeks ago, there was a New York Times article where they were like, this company has been running different experiments on their website. Who knows what the implications of that are on that person's life or whatever, but I can imagine at that time, doing what you were doing, you had to do a lot of education. How do you handle that? How do you tackle that with partners that are just like completely foreign to this kind of space?
It's an interesting one. And yeah, if I think back to 2013, 2014, when I started at LeadForensics, GDPR wasn't around then.
Sure.
GDPR kicked in 15, 16, if I remember correctly. It was obviously on its way, but you would talk to people and they'd be like, hang on, is that legal? You're like, yes,
Yeah.
it's legal. And you've got to explain the concept around like a commercial IP address. And it's just the education piece. And like that, we've got documentation, we're DMA approved. And it's just educating people around it. And I remember one meeting I had, we were up in London meeting an agency and we were presenting to their account management team. And then one girl just like put her hand up and went, excuse me, like, can you track what I do online? And she looked absolutely petrified. And everybody was just looking at her going, oh, this is really awkward. Like, what have you been doing, sort of thing. But it's just educating, having the content, having the documentation, showing them the product. Once they see it and they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Whereas like when you're saying, hey, we're telling you who's on your website, they're like, oh, I don't know if I like that. But once you see it and you can see the names of the businesses, you're like, oh, yeah, we spoke to them on Tuesday. We had a meeting with them on Tuesday. It makes sense that we're on our website. And once they start to see businesses that they know of because they're clients, they're prospects, they're working with them, they're partners, once they saw that and they're like, oh, yeah, like there is truth in this, they would be on our website for a reason. You're not just making it up and listing random businesses to me.
Yeah. And we'd take it one step further and be like, and you can change your website. I think we even had an integration back in the day. It's like you can change your website based on which companies come into the website. So it's like, hey, LeadForensics, like you should like Optimizely because we work with these companies like you, and people are like, what? Like, how are you doing that? It's like, it really freaks people out. Even the partners. I had a ton of conversations like that when people are like, so like, how much can you see how I'm, especially when we were like, oh yeah, we work with all of these companies, and they're like, you work with that company? Like, I use that company. So we ran into that a lot. And you kind of talked about this, like having to go like evolve from like a sell to motion to a sell through motion. And I think that that's like something that a lot of people have to tackle working in the partnerships world, right? And it probably doesn't come naturally to most. Like you've been at LeadForensics a while now, and I'm sure you've kind of nailed that. Like, tell me a little bit about like those maturity stages, or like what you figured out as you like really nailed that sell through motion.
I feel like initially there was, like I said a minute ago, there was a fairly big learning curve initially around like just getting used to the concept of a partner being on your side rather than being like somebody you're trying to convince. getting my head around that initially, like as soon as my head was around that, I was like, right, okay, how do we optimize this process? How do we enable our partners? How do we support our partners to help us as much as possible? So yeah, there's scenarios where we speak direct to the client, like on a referral basis and a rev share. We have reseller agreements with some of our partners where we're just purely selling and educating our partners. So we've got to wear different hats at different times. So sometimes, the partner is the client. Sometimes the partner is somebody you're trying to make the client, just depending upon the setup. So yeah, it's having to switch that on and off, and just having the mentality or having the mindset that these guys are on your side, even if they don't know about you, even if you're talking to them for the first time. You might have spoken to their digital director, their VP of sales, their C-suite. They're on board. You're now speaking to the individual contributors. Like, they're on your side. Like, you don't need to close them. You don't need to shut doors behind you. It's like, this is the product, this is the concept, this is the process, this is your comp, this is how it benefits you. What do you need from us? So yeah, I think it's just a mindset thing and having the resources and the tools to support you.
Yeah, and one of the things that we ran into at Optimizely was like just having regular FaceTime with our top partners made such a difference for the sales reps. Like we had one partner who basically like set up his mini office in our office, and he almost had his own desk, and he was just living in our office pretty much, and everyone was very comfortable working with him on deals. And then like if it was a different partner, it's a completely different experience. It's not like, oh, all partners are like this. It's a completely different experience. Like over the years working at LeadForensics, what are some of the things that you've done to kind of like grease the wheels on that like co-selling or like sell-through motion with your sales team and the partners?
Yes, I think when I was in the UK, it was actually very different to being over here in the US, just because of the size and sort of the geography. Like, when I was working with UK based partners, I would have a week when I was on like a little roadshow tour of the UK, like driving up north and doing Manchester and Leeds and then like looping England. And it was that FaceTime, getting in front of them, being in their office, presenting to their team. That really went a long way. And then when I moved over here, I can't really drive everywhere now, but getting out, getting in front of them definitely adds a lot of value. Catalyst a few months ago was phenomenal for that.
Yeah.
Having the ability to be in front of somebody for the first time in about 2.5 years, rather than just on Zoom or Teams, it goes so much further just being there face to face. So we try and get out as much as possible. We try and get that FaceTime. We noticed very early on that having that FaceTime drove revenue. It drove interaction. It drove deals. It drove opportunities. And we're hiding behind our screens doing busy admin work. So we were like, no, I'm having this week out. I'm leaving the office. I'm going, and just sort of forcing ourselves to do it initially. And then when you're there, you're presenting to partners, and you're taking them for lunch, you're taking them for dinner, and they're just sort of casually mentioning a particular opportunity. You're like, oh, we could actually help you with that because of ABC. Whereas that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the FaceTime. Because it's a half hour, an hour window with a set agenda. Whereas you just off the cuff, I'm with you for longer. It's more informal. It just goes a long way. Additionally, for us, it's where we can't perhaps do that as much in the US right now, or we haven't been able to for the last few years. It's how do we enable our partners? Is there something we can do for them that enables them? Do we comp them a license to LeadForensics for a few months or for a year? Like, what can we do to help them? Do we throw out free tracking scripts for clients and do sort of behind the scenes tests? Just using like as many tools as possible to drive engagement and interaction and get them talking about opportunities.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And have definitely experienced some of the same stuff. Doing partnerships out in the UK or in Europe, we could just like fly from Amsterdam to London in the morning and like do a few
Back in the
meetings and fly
afternoon.
back. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And it's like a 50-minute flight or something. It's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So I know that lead forensics traditionally more of a direct sales motion,
Hmm.
and so that, like, you've been there a long time, so I'm excited to like learn a little bit about that culture and how it's evolved over time, and like
Yeah.
some of the, like, if we maybe some of the successes, but also talk about some of the challenges in operating in an environment like that. I imagine we have a lot of people that are listening that have run into similar.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to Maureen Little's Supernode presentation the other day, and she made a comment at the end of the presentation around how, as a partner leader, your goal, or perhaps not your goal, but you will have your face on other department leaders' dartboards.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of like sent that video to my team and went, just listen to the last 2.5 minutes of this. Am I achieving this? And they both the people I sent it to went, yeah, you've absolutely nailed that. We're being in a direct organization and being the sort of the bolted on partner team, as it has been for many years, has definitely had its challenges for sure. A lack of support, a lack of resources when everything goes to the direct organization. And the way we operate as an organization is quite modular. We get a process, we work on a structure, we nail the process, and then we just replicate and spin it up. And they've always said, like, hey, we can grow the partner team, just tell us the model. And then me and my predecessor Mike were like, we can't give you the model because it's an open system, it's not a closed system.
Yeah.
It's hazy, it's nebulous, there's too many moving parts. And we've always had that challenge around, like, we know what we're doing, we can do it, but like, I can't give you, if we do this, we're going to generate this much revenue, because it doesn't work like that. We've got so many external factors. We've got a partner that we've got that has their own mind and their own agenda and their own focus. In a direct sale, you don't have that. It's just you and the end user. So we've always been sort of scrappy and fighting away and pushing and trying to. We have been making people aware of our successes. So if a deal lands that's got a partner sort of attached to it, or it's partner influenced, everybody's aware. They see that, and it's just that constant, like, notifying the wider organization of the successes.
Yeah.
One of my goals in sort of leading the team now was around marketing collateral. So our marketing team have OKRs around putting out a case study every single week. And I was like, right, I want to see 3 of these a month from partners, because partners love to shout out about themselves and the success they're seeing when a client perhaps not. So we've got an upper hand. And we're now achieving that. Most of our success stories and case studies that we're now producing internally are partners. And then when they get created and pushed around the company on email and on our Slack channels, everybody's going, oh, another partner one. So it's just like constantly chipping away and saying, hey, look how good we are. Look what we're doing over here.
Yeah.
And then, behind that, we've got higher AOV. Our close rate is like from demo to close is about 3 times stronger than any other division in the business. We've got higher retention, like all the metrics are in our favor. It's just we've never been able to say, if we do X, you'll get Y. So I'm working on that. It's that art versus science thing. I'm not going to be able to get you one. I couldn't draw it on the wall behind me and go, right, that is the partnership structure. If we do this, we're going to do that. It doesn't work like that. But I'm looking at it now saying, right, what can I break down? What can I build into a process? What can I put a structure around that I can say, okay, we've got a little model here and a model here. The connection between these 2 models, that's an art, that's not science. But if I can make as many little structures and processes and models as possible, it's going to lead towards having an end-to-end structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
So
does.
I'm
Yeah.
chipping away at it bit by bit.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy for people to get caught up in like the work and not caught up enough in like making this sounds bad, but making sure people know about the impact that the work has.
Hmm.
It's like I no, we shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back all the time, but the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods, did it really happen? It's like the
Yeah.
observer effect or whatever. It's like, if no one knows that your team's having an impact, are you having an impact?
Yeah.
And so like forming those kind of rituals where you're like, I really like you saying, hey, like 3 a month, like, okay, great, we're going to form a habit around finding 3 of these a month. A deal, we do this thing bi-weekly, like a win reel,
Hmm.
where every other week we'll basically just list like all of the AEs, CSMs, account managers, like everyone that's like done something really cool with a
Yeah.
partner, like they closed a big deal, they like it made an introduction, like all of the like the big things, and kind of shout everyone out but by proxy we highlight, oh, that deal was a partner deal, I didn't know that, like and so you're kind of celebrating other people, but you're also kind of celebrating the impact that the team's having. I
Yeah.
did like I think it's easy for partnerships people to get caught up in the admin work, like you
Yep.
kind of described, because it's like we're all kind of operational systems thinkers. Like otherwise, you just wouldn't be in this line of work, because there's just some. It's like it is harder to do our job than to do a direct sales job.
Can
But
you go and tell like the 50
yeah,
people
yeah.
out there
Oh
that please?
gosh, I do often. Any salesperson I meet, don't get me wrong, like their job carries a lot more pressure. I
Yeah.
think it's a like the salespeople are on the line every quarter. If you have a bad quarter, like you're only as good as your last one, and that's your reputation on the line. So don't
Hmm.
get me wrong, I love salespeople, and you and I have both done sales in the past and carried a quota, so we get it.
Yeah.
But like our job it is harder.
Yeah.
It's less pressure, but it's definitely more complex. Um,
Just more
that being,
parts, more moving
yeah,
parts,
exactly.
more to
And
it.
so like
Yeah.
people, it attracts people that like that, like, oh, like there's a problem here to solve, and like I want to try and figure it out. And the problem with that is that those are often people that just like stick their heads into the ground and like try and solve a problem, and then
Hmm.
they're on to the next problem, and then they're on to the next problem, rather than like, the great thing about salespeople is like they get motivated by having a large impact. Like they're pumped if they can bring the biggest deal in that month
Yeah.
or that quarter, and like everyone will know if that salesperson closed a massive deal, everyone in the company is going to know about it. And so I
Yeah.
think there's definitely something that we can learn from them around those kind of rituals. Are there any other rituals or habits or things like that you found over the years that you've kind of formed on your team that's helped grease the wheels or make your life a little bit easier internally?
Rituals I've formed over the years. I don't know if this is the right answer to that, but I find that I have to write everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know my team have got in the process of that as well now. Like, yeah, my team will send me messages on Slack saying, I'm just saving this so I can revisit it later. And like, because we've got so much going on, I'm like, guys, just write everything down. Don't try and remember stuff because you will get distracted. You'll move on. And yeah, there's scenarios where we'll end up with 30 Chrome tabs open, or you'll minimize Chrome and have 15 open emails that are half written. It's like, this is why, like, let's just document everything. Let's have the to-do list, and let's just keep prioritizing and readjusting on a daily basis. Yeah, there's always going to be something new and shiny that we can work towards. But like, is it urgent? Is it important? Do we need to do it today? No. Okay, right. Park that. What do we need to do today to make the boat move faster?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, no, that's also a great like positive habit, and it's going to help you orient towards impact, which is the
Yeah.
most important thing. Absolutely love it. And so like one of the things you mentioned when we were chatting before we started this was that you've been working a lot on the last few months as you got the promotion to running the global team on getting the right structure in place. And you kind of touched upon it a little bit there and doing things in the right way. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you're thinking about that. Like, what is the structure that, like, where you can create structure? Like, what are you trying to create structure around? And what is the right way?
Yeah. So what is the right way? I don't know. I guess I'm testing, trying to find the right way. What I noticed, and I was aware of anyway, because I was doing it myself, is like I was trying to acquire partners, I was trying to sell to partners, we were selling through partners. Like, as a partner manager, you wear too many hats. And I posted something on LinkedIn about this a couple of months ago, and it got a load of traction, and everybody sort of jumped on and went, "We do." And you touched on it a minute ago. It's the hardest job going. How do I simplify that for my team? How do I simplify it for myself? Like, should you be acquiring and managing partners, or should you just be acquiring partners or managing partners? So one of the things that we've done at the moment, and we literally launched this week, is we've got a partner acquisition team and we've got a partner management team. And everybody's now working together. So the partner managers are reliant upon the partner acquisition team. And then the partner acquisition guys are comped on the partner managers generating deals. So everybody's in it together. They're holding each other accountable. Whereas previously we were like frenemies. We're friends, but we're also enemies because we're competing for the incentives, and I want to beat you and you want to beat me. Whereas now it's like, actually, guys, we're all in this together. If you win, I'm going to win, and vice versa. So I am trying to move in that direction around, right, let's simplify whatever we can. Do we need to create a new role? Do we need to put somebody in that role? Or does one person cover two particular sort of job functions rather than everybody covering 8? So simplifying the agency partner side or our solutions partner side. Historically, we've been solutions partners. We've been moving into tech over the last 6 to 8 months. So I've got the solutions partner side of the business, which is our partner team effectively. You know, we're doing double-digit percentage of total company revenue. It's okay, how do we continue our growth quarter over quarter through this side of the team? But alongside that, I am looking at that shiny thing over here, which is tech partners and integrations and this whole new world for us. Once we've got that activated, our revenue will triple, quadruple, 10x because of the opportunity over here. There was a great session at Catalyst where somebody was saying agency partnerships are the hardest ones. And I'm like, yep, that's resonating. So providing we can keep that revenue and grow that revenue by having a more simplified role across individuals and everybody working together, it's like, okay, we have the process there. Now we know what we're doing. We can keep refining the process. We can get a little bit more granular around what does our partner acquisition process look like? What does our onboarding and enablement look like? And we're always going to continue to fine tune that. But now that we've got it split out, we can drill in and say, right, if we change this one thing, what's the overall impact of that? Whereas historically, we had 5 partner managers doing everything. If I change one thing, it's very, very difficult to measure the outcome of or the success of that one change because there's just too many moving parts. Whereas if I've got one guy bucking agencies and he changes his pitch, or he starts to send out stuff on LinkedIn or email, or we send out gifts in the post, what's the impact of that one change? Okay, how do we continue to optimize that? So breaking everything down allows for the optimization.
Yeah, I love that. I love like that kind of systems thinking is so beneficial. And you know, like yesterday, I was looking at an old version of the Optimizely partner program from 2012, and I was like, oh, this is so funny. Like, you know, this looks so old. And then I looked at we did an update in 2014.
Yep.
And I looked at the 2014 version, and I wasn't laughing because I was like, wow, that looks a lot like everyone's partner programs now. You know, it's like people haven't really done that much difference since then. And it's really cool that you're kind of, as you're going into this role, really trying to like take things back and do some systems thinking and figure out, okay, like what's the right structure for this.
Yeah,
Absolutely love it. So one thing I saw you post on LinkedIn recently was
yep,
around like, now you're in this leadership role, like you kind of have ownership of ideas. Like, you were the ideas person in the past, but you were
yep.
passing those to someone else, and now you're the one that kind of has ownership of what you do with those ideas. Like, that really kind of struck a chord with me. I'd love to like hear maybe like what brought that up, and like just your observation on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because like 6 months ago, I think I said it on my post actually. If I came up with some wacky idea, I'd be like, Mike, can we test this? And then he would like look at it and go, no, that's a ridiculous idea, Chris, because of ABC. And I was always coming out with stupid ideas that were just off the wall and like, can we try this? Can we try that? Not thinking of like the bigger picture around like,
Yeah.
what's the cost of that? What's the implications of launching something like that? That's me now. I've got to deal with that. So I'm coming up with my own ideas and shutting them down very quickly. But alongside that, if there's any problems arise, channel conflicts, partnership versus inbound, happens all the time. I was like, Mike, please go and speak to our CMO. This is mine. This is why. And it's like, no, I've now got to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it's having not only the ideas, but having to deal with all the problems. Problems arise on a daily basis because we're a growing company and we're always trying new things as an organization. Problems will arise, channel conflict will arise. The buck now stops with me. So it's like I can't palm it off. So it's just the extra pressure of that. But it's also, who do you turn to for support, for ideas, for guidance? Like, if a problem arises now and I'm like, I actually don't know how to deal with this, I'm like, what do I do? Like, I can go to partnership leaders and be like, guys, has anybody witnessed this? Or I can go internally and speak to our CMO or a VP of sales, a CRO, CEO internally and be like, hey, what do I do here? And they may give me an answer from their perspective, which isn't partner based.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be something where I need a partnership perspective to it around, hey, I need to defend our partner in this scenario, where they're just thinking of it from let's just get the revenue, whatever the scenario is. So it's lonely at the top. I'm not at the top, as I said, but it's lonely in this role because there's nobody you can really talk to on a daily basis or sort of cross-check with or refer things to and say, what do you think to this? It's like, you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah, that, honestly, you basically described why we started Partnership Leaders. Is it that exact situation where
Mm-hmm.
I'm and why we did Catalyst, like you kind of called out. So you're really getting it. But yeah, like me and Chris basically had like we had a check-in called like Chris Tai Lament or something like that, where we were
Mm-hmm.
just like complaining about how hard everything was, and it was like, oh God, thank God we have someone else we can talk to about this stuff, because it's so
Yep.
difficult. Because it was basically like a therapy session.
I've gained a therapist at Catalyst.
Yeah,
He's probably listened to this. I text him today. He knows who he is.
that's hilarious. That's so awesome. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that the CEO job is like the most lonely job you can have, right? Because you're even further up where there's just no one, because you have to put like a pretty face on everything to keep your team, or not like, you don't have to sugarcoat it, but you do
Yeah.
have to kind of like show people the positives and keep everyone motivated. And that can be a real challenge sometimes, especially in partnerships, if you're just getting beaten up all the time, which can be what it feels like sometimes.
We are CEOs at the end of the day, aren't we? Yeah, we're mini CEOs of our team. We've got our own products, we've got our own marketing, we've got our own support and sales. Like, we're CEOs within an organization.
Yeah.
So we probably face the same challenges on a slightly smaller scale, or
Yeah.
potentially
Yeah.
a lot smaller scale.
I think Amazon calls them on intrapreneurs or something, which is like the most horrible term, like it gives me, yeah, I feel it kind of gives me the shivers using that term, but like
Yeah,
that's
it's not the
what I've
nicest,
heard.
is it?
Yeah, it's gross. Well, we're running out of time, which is a shame, but I'd love to ask you our regular question,
Yeah.
which is, what is something that you've learned recently that you'd like to share with all of our listeners?
Besides the one I've just mentioned around being lonely in this role, and this is something that I should have learned years and years and years ago. It's the posting on LinkedIn, putting your face out there in the community, being active on partnership leaders. I was always lurking in the shadows. And then listening to Isaac on one of the Partner Up podcasts, he made a comment around the fact that you don't post in itself is your brand. And that just really resonated with me. And the following day, I was like, right, or later that day, I was like, I'm posting on LinkedIn starting from tomorrow. And I try and do it daily. I struggle to do it daily because I'm not the most creative person when it comes to when it comes to ideas and things to share. But I definitely see the value in it. I've made connections. I've got the person at Catalyst I just referred to because of engaging on LinkedIn. There's business opportunities that have come off the back of it around potential integrations and really exciting opportunities that will 5x my channel and the revenue that we generate if we can position it correctly. So just putting your name out there, putting content out there, building that brand, building the engagement with people, with your peers and other partnership people. And at the same time, it's ruffled a few feathers internally with sales guys and CS people going, interesting. Like, maybe I should go and work in the partner team. Because I've been there preaching how good partnerships are and the decade of the ecosystem and everything. And they're like, oh, maybe that's really interesting, actually. Like, we just thought you just grabbed referrals and we closed them. I'm like, no, we do a lot more than that.
Yeah, man, a shout out to Jay McBain because I was like juiced up after his section at Catalyst where he was talking about the decade of the ecosystem. It's, oh my gosh, like electrifying as a vision. Just amazing stuff, and I think articulates a lot of what everyone feels. Right, like any tips? Because I'm in the same boat as you, where it takes me out of my comfort zone to do stuff like this transparently, and like now that I've got into a habit of doing them, I love the conversations, and you probably like really enjoy the connections you make through your posts. Like, any tips for people on forming habits around that kind of active? Like, how should someone get started posting on LinkedIn and being a bit more active in the community?
Yeah, and I'm definitely still like refining my process around this for sure. I've definitely got nowhere near mastering it yet. I think that there's a couple of pieces. Number one, I always try and take time out on a Sunday to schedule my weekly posts, because as soon as Monday morning hits, you've got your inbox, you've got people talking to you, you've got people calling you, sending you Slack messages. At that point, taking yourself out of the business to post something on LinkedIn is incredibly tough.
Yeah.
So taking the time out ahead of the week, saying, right, what do I post this week? What can I put out there into the world? And then saying, right, 5 posts, and then jumping on it 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, just copy and paste your message, onto LinkedIn and publish. That getting in that regime and that routine's definitely gone a long way. Thinking of the stuff is what I said a minute ago that I struggle with. So I'm listening back to old Partnered. I'm listening to old Partner Up. I'm looking back at stuff from like 18 months, 2 years ago, and going, oh, that's interesting. And then just putting that trying to put my spin on it and posting that. I'm just, particularly because of the new role, I like any self-development I do is partner focused. Like you only know what you know. So like all my commutes, listening to the relevant podcasts, just trying to absorb as much content and information as possible, not only for LinkedIn, but it'll give me ideas around, maybe we should try this week. And so, just absorb as much content as possible and think how that impacts yourself. But then taking time out to schedule stuff as well definitely helps.
Absolutely love it. Well, I kind of took some mental notes there. I think I'm going to take that advice on board as well and try and do a bit of a better job. So
Awesome.
beneficial for me, I'm sure really beneficial for everyone listening. So really appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to kind of share some of your experience and insights with the gang. It means a lot. So thank you.
Awesome. You're more than welcome. I've enjoyed this. It's been awesome.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Chris.
Ty.